Chapter 71 The Bottomless Pit of Raising Children. In Li Xiandao's hometown, there is an old saying. You little brat, you'll eat your father out of house and home. Li Xiandao didn't fully understand this statement before. How much can a child eat? But now it seems he was too naive. Xiao Qi asked with a grim expression. Can we return the goods now? Li Xiandao blinked. Our remaining 400,000 divine sources were consumed in one meal by them. On average, each little flame king consumes more than 40 divine sources per meal. Xiao Qi found it hard to imagine how much divine source it would take to raise them. And as they grow, their appetites are gradually expanding, Xiao Qi said. Li Xiandao was stunned. Looking at the little flame kings who were happily eating their fill, Li Xiandao was at his wits' end. How long can they last after eating one meal? Li Xiandao asked the crucial question. If it's only one meal a day, he wouldn't even have time to rob it. Xiao Qi took a deep breath and said, 2 meals a day. Li Xiandao's heart was bleeding. He looked at Xiao Qi in disbelief and said, They've only just been born, do they need to be fed so well? Can we abuse them? In despair, Li Xiandao came up with a good idea. For example, eating once a week, or once a month. If you don't want an invincible burning legion, then you can torture them, Xiao Qi said helplessly. The invincible burning legion? Li Xiandao's eyes lit up, his heart pounding with excitement. The thought of 10,000 little flame kings growing up, especially with the systematic training at the Heaven and Earth Bank, and the need to redeem them from the Library of All Nations, is far greater than the potential of their unreliable father. Before long, they will break through to the immortal realm, and Li Xiandao will lead them to sweep across the immortal realm. Just thinking about it is quite exciting. Then let's wait a bit. We'll put these little flame kings in the time palace, and I'll think about how to take care of them. Li Xiandao felt he was having a hard time. All they wanted to do was train a large army, but the sacrifices they made were far too great. Xiao Qi offered her suggestion, saying, Master, the Battle Angel Michael and the White Emperor Tian Guangming are bringing back the ancient dragon tomb. There must be many treasures inside. If it's substantial enough, it shouldn't be a problem to feed these little flame kings. Li Xiandao nodded and said, I'm also waiting for them to come back, otherwise we really won't have a meal next time. Li Xiandao truly has no divine source left. Not to mention the divine source that has been gathered into blocks. Even the Celestial Emperor's brush, a magical artifact, couldn't be activated. It remained quietly in the Heavenly Bank. He hadn't realized it before, but at this moment, Li Xiandao realized just how poor he really was. So poor people should never have children recklessly, or they won't be able to support them, Li Xiandao muttered, thinking that the King of Flames was truly a bastard. Without considering whether it could survive, it frantically created 10,000 little flame kings. Without Li Xiandao taking over, it would be considered good if 1,000 of those 10,000 little flame kings survived. Li Xiandao is waiting for the Battle Angel Michael to return. Archangel Gabriel also helped Li Xiandao deal with some bad contracts and debts, and then returned to the Heaven and Earth Bank. Without saying a word, Li Xiandao sent him directly to take care of the little flame king. Archangel Gabriel was also shocked when he saw so many lesser flame kings. There was also the monk Tianxin who returned after collecting his debts. He brought back the treasury of the Holy Land of 100 flowers. An entire treasury. Li Xiandao gave all these things to Xiao Qi, asking her to feed the little flame king. 2 meals. 1 day. It's completely gone. 10,000 little flame kings devoured the entire treasury of a holy land in a single day. Their appetites are expanding at a rate visible to the naked eye. When Li Xiandao saw this, he truly regretted it. Li Xiandao thought he had made a profit from this deal before, but now it seems like a bottomless pit. Having no other option, Li Xiandao could only send the monk Tianxin to collect the debt. Several major religious sects in the Great Li region still owe debts to the Heavenly Bank. Unable to sustain himself, Li Xiandao had no choice but to send monk Tianxin to collect the debts. After reviewing the contracts, I identified 5 that were worth reclaiming. These are Valley of 10,000 Demons. Sacred Land of 100 Flowers. Mingda Academy. Xiandao Sect. 10,000 Buddha Sect. The debts owed to the 100 Flowers Holy Land have already been recovered, and Li Xiandao originally did not intend to collect the remaining 4 debts so quickly. But now we can't do without it. Li Xiandao imagined that in the future he would have 10,000 towering giants, their bodies wreathed in flames, each wielding a uniform weapon, clearing a path for him and slaying all enemies in his way. Li Xiandao's blood was boiling. Even with a large investment, he couldn't bear to let these little flame kings go hungry. Unfortunately, the monk Tianxin, who had just returned, only glanced at the little flame king before being sent away by Li Xiandao. All 4 contracts must be recovered, with interest. You are permitted to act. Anyone who dares to stop you or delay you will be killed without mercy. Li Xiandao said coldly. Monk Tianxin didn't understand where Li Xiandao got these 10,000 little flame kings with unlimited potential, but since he was now Li Xiandao's subordinate, he had no choice but to run around. His strength was profound, and the remaining 4 major sects and forces were helpless against him. We can't beat them. They have no point in arguing. There's no other way but to compensate them. Every day, Monk Tianxin would return, bringing with him a large amount of divine essence, treasures, and resources. Then they all went into the bellies of these little fire kings. They have no taboos. They will eat anything that carries energy and can replenish their core energy. Li Xiandao's only consolation was that they weren't picky eaters. If he eats a lot and is picky about food, then Li Xiandao really needs to consider whether or not to raise him. After 4 days of this busy work, Li Xiandao, Shao Qi, Gabriel, and Tianxin were all exhausted. Tianxin had to keep going out to collect debts, then send them back, and then go out to collect debts again. Gabriel and Xiaoqi were either feeding the animals or on their way to feed them. They were so busy that they didn't have time to rest at all. Li Xiandao looked at the large amount of treasures that had been added to his left hand, while his right hand had been devoured, and he was so heartbroken that he couldn't say a word. Michael, please come back soon. Li Xiandao missed Michael's kindness more than ever before. Fortunately, Michael returned on the 5th day. Battle Angel Michael, White Emperor Tian Guangming, Long Haitao, and Long Yun all returned and parted ways in the far north. These are all treasures from the ancient dragon tomb. I'm handing them to you now. Long Haitao handed the storage magic item to Michael. Michael nodded and said, "From now on, you have no connection with the Heaven and Earth Bank. You are free." Long Haitao breathed a sigh of relief and said with a smile, "Yes, then we'll be leaving now." Michael and the heavenly light watched them leave. The next second, they heard Li Xiandao's anxious voice. "Come back immediately. It's an emergency. If you don't come back, people will die." Michael and Gabriel's expressions changed drastically. Could it be that the Heaven and Earth Bank had been attacked by the enemy? Without a moment's delay, the two immediately returned to the Heaven and Earth money shop. Chapter 72 The Kingdom of Books. Heaven and Earth Bank. Battle Angel Michael and White Emperor Tian Guangming rushed back, only to find the Heaven and Earth Bank completely quiet, with none of the problems Li Xiandao had mentioned. "Master, what exactly happened?" Michael asked in confusion. "Give me the treasures from the ancient dragon tomb first, and we'll talk about the rest later," Li Xiandao said impatiently. He needed to find out exactly how many treasures were inside the ancient dragon tomb. Michael immediately handed the storage magic item to Li Xiandao. Li Xiandao flicked his finger, and his powerful true energy transformed into a short sword, which directly struck the storage magic treasure. Click. The storage magic item cracked open, and all the treasures immediately fell out. Rumble. 30 dragon tombs tumbled out with great force, landing in the main hall. Fortunately, the main hall is large enough to store all of these. Li Xiandao reached out and lifted the lids of the 30 dragon tombs, revealing what was inside. A dazzling array. Divine veins, ancient spirit stones, divine source mines, countless magical treasures, as well as the spirit of fire, the dragon soul tree, and other treasures. The treasures unearthed from the 30 dragon tombs were enough to satisfy Li Xiandao. What pleased Li Xiandao even more was the main tomb among the 30 dragon tombs. The main tomb was so large that it seemed to contain even more treasures, but to Li Xiandao's surprise, there were not many treasures in the main tomb, only 9 dragon eggs. The dragon eggs in the ancient dragon tomb. It's obvious whose they are. Infernal fire dragon. A branch of the ancient dragon race. They are very powerful, have a violent temper, are born with the fire attribute, and look ferocious. Once they reach adulthood, they have the strength of immortals. This is the infernal fire dragon, many of which have become extinct by now. Therefore, finding 9 dragon eggs here was a very pleasant surprise for Li Xiandao. But immediately, Li Xiandao thought that if the little Flame King could eat so much, wouldn't the purgatory fire dragon eat even more once it was hatched? Wait a minute, it seems like this place has turned into a nursery, just for raising kids? Li Xiandao suddenly realized that there were too many children. With 10,000 little Flame Kings and 9 dragon eggs, Li Xiandao is about to go from being the owner of the Heaven and Earth Bank to the principal of a kindergarten. No, I have to think of a way. Li Xiandao made up his mind to find a solution that would satisfy both sides. Tian Guangming Michael, take these divine source veins to Xiao Qi and feed the children first. Then we'll discuss how to arrange their lives, Li Xiandao instructed. Michael and Tian Guangming obeyed, but were still completely confused. What child? Does Tiandi Money Shop have children? What kind of child needs to consume so much divine essence? Completely bewildered, they entered the Hall of Time and were instantly astonished. The 10,000 little Flame Kings have grown considerably, from the size of a thumb to over a meter tall. Their bodies are wreathed in flames, burning fiercely, and they are extremely powerful. Just by looking at their aura, each one is much stronger than the Dao Inquiry realm. They've grown so big in just a few days. If they were allowed to eat and drink as they please, they would probably grow even faster. Xiao Qi took the divine source veins from Michael and the others. Although these divine source veins were slightly inferior to divine spirit veins, they could still be dissolved into millions of divine sources. And so they kept busy feeding these little Flame Kings. Inside the main hall, Li Xiandao began collecting the corpses of the Purgatory Dragon clan. The 30 dragon corpses were an absolute fortune, and the 30 coffins were invaluable treasures. Li Xiandao collected them all and stored them in the Heaven and Earth Bank, then took out a divine vein. He wants to redeem the Library of Nations. The Library of All Nations contains all the cultivation techniques and secret manuals of 10,000 imperial dynasties. Although a large portion of them have been lent out, many still remain in the Library of All Nations. Li Xiandao wants to further his cultivation, and the Universal Library must be redeemed. Another point is that Li Xiandao needs to prepare cultivation techniques for 10,000 little Flame Kings. These little Flame Kings have been cultivating, working hard, and striving all along, relying on their instincts. Their current achievements are all due to their extraordinary talents. However, if we allow the other side to develop unchecked, we will inevitably follow the same path as the King of Flames. The King of Flames lived freely in the world of flames, never venturing out, like a frog in a well, lacking any systematic training and relying entirely on talent and instinct. Therefore, it needs to enter the human world, learn gradually, and find its next direction in evolution. Li Xiandao wanted an invincible army, not a motley crew of undisciplined soldiers with varying levels of cultivation. The divine vein is like a delicate jade plate. In Li Xiandao's hands, one can clearly feel the energy contained within the divine vein. Once this energy is unleashed, it will be enormous. This divine vein is definitely not simple. Holding the divine vein, which resembled a jade plate, Li Xiandao walked out of the main hall, looked up at the endless void, and said, "I want to redeem the Library of All Nations." Rumble. A tremor occurred in the void of the Heaven and Earth Bank. Outside the main hall, everything was shrouded in mist, making it impossible to see the direction or the location. However, this tremor shook the mist apart. As the clouds dispersed and the mountains rose and fell, the main hall of the Heaven and Earth Bank was located on a large mountain, next to which was the Time Palace, and a mountain peak not far away was revealed. For large characters were written on a cliff face in the mountains. The Library of Nations. The entire mountain is a library. This was something Xiandao hadn't expected. He had thought it was still a scripture pavilion, but it turned out to be a huge mountain. The clouds and mist dispersed, and now Xiandao only had 3 large mountains left. The Trading Hall. The Time Hall. The Library of Nations. The jade plate containing the divine vein in his hand also disappeared, turning into nothingness. Xiandao flashed and appeared in front of the gate of the Universal Library. The stone gate, made of a massive boulder weighing tens of thousands of kilograms, blocked both sides. Xiandao reached out and gently touched it. The stone door slowly opened, making a creaking sound. The stone door of the Universal Library hadn't been opened for 10,000 years. It was very heavy, but it obediently opened automatically in front of Xiandao. Because Xiandao is the owner of the Heaven and Earth Bank. As soon as the stone door was opened, what hit us was not dust, nor the smell of decay, nor the musty smell of long time. It's not just the air of books. The scent of books wafted into Xiandao's nose, making him take a deep breath and feel refreshed. Upon entering, Xiandao was immediately astonished. The entire mountain is hollow inside, carved with countless libraries containing many ancient statues of people, animals, and depictions of cities. More importantly, some of the books here have become sentient and have begun to transform their consciousness, moving freely within the world and becoming indistinguishable from humans. Xiandao was quite surprised to see this. This is a kingdom within a book. Chapter 74 Ancient Book of War. Walking through the World Library, Xiandao saw a place that resembled a huge city. A kingdom within a book. Many books have come to life. A book has grown legs, hands, eyes, facial features, and can speak, communicating in a refined and courteous manner. This completely shattered Xiandao's worldview, leaving him utterly shocked. They were quite surprised by Xiandao's arrival, and 1 or 2 of them gathered around him to watch. This is a human. It's humankind. After 10,000 years, the Library of Nations has finally been opened. Is he our new master? Not necessarily, let's wait and see. This kingdom within the book contains tens of millions of books. The entire mountain has been hollowed out, stretching endlessly with hundreds of layers. Xiandao's arrival immediately attracted their attention. At this moment, everyone gathered together to watch Xiandao. I am your new master. Xiandao looked at them, not intimidated, and said generously. Are you the new master? A book wrapped in frost asked. It must be an ice-based cultivation technique. That's right, I am the new owner of Chengdi Money House, and also your new owner, Xiandao nodded. Has the World Library been reopened? Asked an old book with yellowed pages and badly worn edges. Xiandao laughed and said, That's right, I have redeemed the Universal Library. From today onwards, you can leave the Universal Library and visit the Heaven and Earth Bank. Upon hearing this, many books excitedly began to unleash their unique talents. An area was frozen by ice, allowing people to skate on it. A fire-eating aura melted the ice, causing rain that fell and poured onto the main road. There was also a gentle breeze blowing, like a spring breeze. Books of different attributes are all dancing freely, releasing their joy. Xiandao observed them carefully without disturbing them. He discovered that the Universal Library currently holds tens of millions of books, but only about 10,000 of them are capable of developing sentience, which is still a very small proportion. These more than 10,000 books that have given birth to intelligence constitute the members of the kingdom within the book. Each has its own dwelling place, studies diligently, and some even begin to interact, fall in love, get married, and research how to give birth to new books. These books roamed freely in the International Library, celebrating Xiandao's new master. They did not resist, but rather welcomed Xiandao with great joy. Seeing their happy expressions, Xiandao's mood improved as well. This is a carefree new race. After they finished celebrating, Xiandao asked, Is there anyone in charge here? Yes, the 10 great books are the 10 great managers from before, one book answered first. The 10 great books? Li Xiandao asked in confusion. In the very beginning, the 10 fiends created the 10 heavenly books. An old book coughed as it answered. The 10 fiends. Li Xiandao was completely bewildered again. After all, he was a time traveler and a servant in this world, so he knew very little about these hidden things, or even nothing at all. The 10 fiends created 10 celestial books in a distant era. They are the Eternal Celestial Book, the Book of the Great Void, the Book of the Years, the Ancient Book of War, the Book of the Origin of Taoism, the Annals of Death, the Secret Scroll of Morality, the Celestial Book of Calamities, the Supreme Forgetfulness, and the Light of the Gods, the old book added. Li Xiandao listened without uttering a word. These 10 books are collectively known as the 10 heavenly books. The meaning is simple. If you obtain one of them, you can fight against the heavens and contend with them, the old book replied. Li Xiandao understood and asked, then where are these 10 heavenly books now? 9 books have been lent out, leaving only one ancient war book in the Universal Library, the old book sighed. Where is this ancient book on war? Li Xiandao immediately asked. Looking around, no trace of the ancient war book was found. It's sleeping. Last time, the International Library closed its doors, and no one could get in, nor could we get out. It went to sleep, saying it would be woken up when the world's library was opened, the old book said. Li Xiandao was taken aback, not expecting this ancient book of war to be so unique. Then where is it? Li Xiandao asked. On the very top floor. It has been dreaming for 10,000 years. You can go and wake it up, the old book said. Li Xiandao nodded and said, you all go about your business. I'll go up and wake it up. Everything else will remain the same. I won't disrupt your lifestyle. Some of the books that had long been accustomed to this kind of life were immediately relieved, and their goodwill towards Li Xiandao inexplicably deepened. Li Xiandao had no intention of reforming this place or prohibiting anything. After all, these are just a bunch of books that have come to life. They have become sentient beings, and through countless years of learning and evolution, they have long been well versed in books, far surpassing Li Xiandao. Even though Li Xiandao has the talent of being omniscient and omnipotent, he doesn't know everything, and he needs someone to guide him. Li Xiandao learns much faster once someone guides him. After bidding farewell to the books below, Li Xiandao arrived at the top floor. There is only one platform here, and on the platform lies a book, a thick book, with 2 large characters written on it. War. The moment Li Xiandao came into view, he immediately felt himself being sucked in. He witnessed an endless war. He saw the utter desolation of countless corpses. He witnessed a horrific tragedy with rivers of blood flowing. He witnessed the desolation of families being torn apart and people being killed. He witnessed the horrors of war. He also saw the power of ancient war books. In a mere instant, Li Xiandao witnessed countless unprecedented wars throughout history. This ancient book of war is composed of countless wars. Unlike other books, the ancient book of war did not develop its own hands and feet. It was just a book, lying on the ground, motionless. If Li Xiandao hadn't seen those books that had come to life before, he wouldn't believe that ancient war books could develop sentience. Picking up the ancient war book, Li Xiandao asked considerately, "Are you awake now?" The ancient war books remain untouched. Li Xiandao flipped through the ancient war book, and his eyes were filled with countless celestial-like characters. Li Xiandao's eyes remained unblinking as his innate talent was activated, granting him omniscience and omnipotence. He quickly grasped the techniques from the ancient war manual. Anything that can be called a heavenly book is a defying the sky existence. Ancient war books are no exception. Upon successful cultivation, one's aura becomes like that of an army, growing stronger with each battle, fearless of injury, and even healing through war chants. Equivalent to a perpetual motion machine. Li Xiandao's first thought was not about his own cultivation. Instead, it's for the little Flame King. There are 10,000 of them. If they all cultivate this, then their fighting will be a perpetual motion machine. Ancient war manuals always provide a far greater boost to a group than to an individual. Just as Xiandao was looking, a figure appeared behind him. Chapter 74. First Session. Xiandao was engrossed in watching, and the figure that appeared behind him did not disturb him, but simply watched silently. It wasn't until Xiandao had copied down the entire ancient book of war that he noticed this figure. "You are the ancient book of war?" Xiandao asked in surprise. "That's right, I am the book of war." The figure was a middle-aged man with black hair, neatly combed, wearing a long robe. He was serious and rigid, with a somewhat stern expression, and looked unapproachable. But this is just a person's appearance, and appearance has little to do with inner qualities. The ancient war book spoke up. "Are you the new owner of the Heaven and Earth Bank?" Xiandao nodded as well. "The previous owner of the Heaven and Earth Bank acted recklessly and mortgaged us all. How long have you been able to redeem us and inherit the Heaven and Earth Bank?" the ancient book of war asked. Xiandao thought for a moment and said, "About a month." "The time was still short, but the fact that you were able to redeem us proves that you did a good job, at least unlike the previous master." The war book made no attempt to hide its disdain and disgust for the previous master. Xiandao asked, "Now that you have developed intelligence and managed this vast kingdom of books, could you do me a favor?" The ancient book of war asked curiously, "What kind of help do you need?" After all, it's a new owner, and it looks quite good, so the war book is willing to give it a try. If it were to remain dormant for tens of thousands of years like its previous owner, the war book would remain dormant. "Help me train an invincible army," Xiandao said, staring at the ancient book of war. Ancient war books are the most suitable for large armies to go on expeditions. When combined with the invincible battle formations contained in the ancient war books, they will be invincible. The ancient book of war asked curiously, "Help you train your troops?" "That's right, help me train a team." Xiandao nodded. "My training is incredibly brutal. Most people can't endure it. And even if they do, if they don't meet my requirements, there's nothing I can do," the ancient book of war said proudly. "I guarantee you'll be very satisfied with this team," Xiandao said with a confident smile. "Don't talk big yet. What I value most in a team is talent. The talent can't be lacking. The second is coordination, or what is called tacit understanding. Some tacit understanding is innate, and no amount of training can change that," the ancient book of war said calmly. Xiandao smiled confidently and said, "You won't find a team in this world with better teamwork than mine." The ancient book of war looked at Xian with surprise and said, "Don't brag. Whether it's bragging or not, you'll know once you see it. Now let's go meet him," Xiandao invited. "All right, I'll see if it's as you say. If it really meets my requirements, I'll train them and pass on all the powerful techniques, battle formations, and ancient methods from my ancient war manual to them," the ancient war manual said. Xiandao was the first to leave the Universal Library, followed closely by the ancient war books. They arrived at the mountain peak where the Temple of Time was located. Xiandao invited the ancient book of war inside. "You'll understand once you go in and take a look." The war book is a book in its essence, floating in mid-air, with a phantom image appearing on it, which is the soul of the war book. Pushing open the door of the Hall of Time, he immediately felt a surge of flames rushing towards him from the ancient book of war. Under the blazing flames, he looked on in astonishment. King of the Little Flames. The king of 10,000 little flames. They lined up, all the same height, the same appearance, the same talent, and the same teamwork. These little flame kings were all created by the same father, with exactly the same composition, so their tacit understanding goes without saying. I was stunned when I first saw the ancient war book. A long-lost excitement and a surge of passion welled up in my heart. No need to say more. I will be their instructor and train them into the most powerful army in the world. Even the immortal kings above the ninth heaven can be easily crushed. The ancient book of war boasted that he now absolutely adored these 10,000 little flame kings. The little flame king has too much potential. If he had been the one to teach him from the beginning. With training, It won't be long before he becomes invincible. The ancient war manual rekindled his former passion, and he set a new goal, to build an invincible army. Li Xiandao smiled with satisfaction. After seeing the contents of the ancient Book of War, he immediately knew that the ancient Book of War was the most suitable mentor for the little Flame King. With the ancient Book of War, the young Flame King's future is far brighter than that of his father, the Flame King. From now on, you will be their instructor, mentor, and coach, taking on multiple roles. I am entrusting them to you, Li Xiandao said earnestly. The ancient war book said in a deep voice, "Give me some time, and I will return to you an invincible army." Li Xiandao nodded in satisfaction, then took a deep breath and said, "However, the most urgent task is to hold a meeting to discuss their future lives." The ancient war books didn't understand why Li Xiandao wanted to discuss this, but he did not refuse. The inaugural conference of Qiandi Qianzhuang has commenced. Chairman, Li Xiandao. Secretary General, Shao Qi. Attendees, Battle Angel Michael, White Emperor of Heavenly Light, Grand Inquisitor Gabriel, Heavenly Heart Monk, Ancient Book of War. These are all the members of the first general meeting of Qiandi Qianzhuang. In the trading hall, Li Xiandao sat down at a long table and said, "This meeting is mainly to discuss the matter of the little Flame King." The others remained silent, listening attentively. The ancient Book of War frowned and asked, "Is there a problem with the little Flame King?" Li Xiandao looked at Shao Qi. Shao Qi smiled awkwardly and said, "The little Flame Kings are good in every way, the only problem is that they eat too much." Everyone was stunned. "Did you eat too much? What does that mean?" 10,000 little Flame Kings consume 1,000,000 divine resources a day. That was the previous data. Now that they've grown up, the consumption is visible to the naked eye. It's 2,000,000 divine resources a day. The treasures we got from the ancient dragon tomb won't last us more than half a month, Shao Qi said helplessly. The ancient war books fell silent. He hadn't expected it to take so much energy. The ancient war books also know that Li Xiandao has only just inherited the Heaven and Earth Money House and doesn't have many resources, so this problem must be solved. Michael and Tian Guangming were both shocked, not expecting that this group of lesser Flame Kings had consumed so much energy. Monk Tianxin knew that Gabriel had taken care of the little Flame King before, so he remained silent. As everyone knows, we can't afford to raise them, at least not right now. We have to think of a way. Li Xiandao tapped the table with his hand, making a thumping sound. Shao Qi's eyes flickered, and she said, "Master, I know a place that seems to be able to house the little Flame King." Li Xiandao looked at Shao Qi in surprise and asked, "Where?" Everyone else looked at Shao Qi with surprise. What kind of place could possibly house 10,000 little Flame Kings? Chapter 75 Hell Heaven. Shao Qi replied to Li Xiandao, "Master, the 9 heavens and 10 earths are 19 places. The 9 heavens are high above, and the 10 earths are distributed in all directions. The Greatly Earth is the weakest and most remote place. It has no resources and cannot support 10,000 little Flame Kings, but other places can." Li Xiandao had a flash of inspiration and said, "What you said makes sense, but where should we choose?" Everyone else also looked at Shao Qi. Shao Qi was confident and said, "When we were feeding them before, I was thinking that since 10,000 little Flame Kings can eat so much and they are not picky eaters, the most suitable place for them is not the Greatly Earth, but Hell Heaven." Hell Heaven. After careful consideration, Li Xiandao finally found some information about Hell Heaven in his memory. As a servant, Li Xiandao knew very little about these things. Hell Heaven is the weakest of the 9 heavens, just like the Great Departure Earth in the 10 earths, and is not valued, Tian Guangming said. As an elder of the Heavenly Dao sect and the White Emperor of the Greatly Land, he knew some information about the 9 heavens and 10 earths. In some ways, Hell Heaven is in a similar predicament to the Great Departure from Earth. Hell Heaven's strength is considerably weaker than that of the 9 heavens, but it's still quite good in the 10 earths. However, no one in the 10 earths accepts it. The reputation of the 10 lands has been passed down for a long time. Although the other regions in the Ten Lands are very unwilling to pay attention to the Greatly Land, if you ask them to remove the Greatly Land and welcome the Hell Heaven, the other 9 regions in the Ten Lands would not be willing at all. Nothing more than self-interest. Among the 10 realms, Delidi will always be at the bottom, unable to rise above them. The other 9 can forever ride on Delidi's back and do whatever they want. But Hell Heaven is different. Even though Hell Heaven is considered one of the 9 heavens, it is still a part of the 9 heavens. If it were to arrive in the 10 lands, one of them might be subjugated by it, its resources gradually dwindling, its experts leaving, and so on. Therefore, even now, Hell Heaven and Great Departure Earth are the 2 most inconspicuous worlds among the 9 heavens and 10 earths. The 9 heavens and 10 earths are like a tree, with the Great Departure Earth and the Hell Heaven being the lowest leaves and branches. Without them, the tree wouldn't look good, but they really aren't that important. It's like a chicken rib. So when Xiaoqi mentioned Hell Heaven, everyone thought about it and found that it was actually possible. The ancient war book says, "I have been to Hell Heaven." A long, long time ago, Hell Heaven was the most powerful of the 9 heavens. However, Hell Heaven's biggest problem was that it was too bloody. Countless people and races died in Hell Heaven every moment. Fortunately, Hell Heaven had the most races in the entire 9 heavens and 10 earths. Does Shao Qi mean to take 10,000 little flame kings to Hell Heaven for proper training? Li Xiandao asked. That's right. Take them out, led by the ancient Book of War, and let them train and struggle in Hell Heaven. At the same time, they will practice the techniques, battle formations, and killing skills in the ancient Book of War, forming a powerful army. In the end, when they can perfectly unleash the ancient Book of War, they will definitely be able to shake the heavens and the earth. Shao Qi nodded. Li Xiandao immediately looked at the ancient Book of War, as it required his consent to proceed. The ancient book on war pondered for a moment but did not answer quickly. Li Xiandao was not in a hurry and waited patiently. After a long pause, the ancient Book of War said, "I can take them to Hell Heaven, and I can also teach them all the techniques in the ancient Book of War, but I have one request." Li Xiandao asked, "What are the requirements?" The others watched silently. The ancient war books are older than any of you here. Even though the 2 angels of the divine race, the battle angel Michael and the archangel Gabriel, had experienced the so-called Great War of the Ages, they were still no older than the Book of War. The Book of War had experienced countless wars. Long, long ago, the ancient Book of War unleashed its full power during the War of the Era. With just 1 book and 1 army, it swept through the 9 heavens, conquered the immortal realm, and overthrew the then rulers of the immortal realm. However, heroes no longer boast of their past glories, and ancient warbooks no longer possess the same fiery passion as they once did. He said, "I just want you to help me find the Lord of War." Li Xiandao really wanted to know who the Lord of War was, because in his memory, there had never been such a person. Shao Qi immediately reminded him, one of the 10 fiends, that is, the peerless powerhouse who created the ancient Book of War, the Lord of War. Li Xiandao understood and asked, "Where is the Lord of War now?" The ancient Book of War sighed in despair and said, "I don't know. Back then, I separated from the Lord of War and fell into the hands of the first owner of the Heaven and Earth Bank, where I was placed in the Library of All Nations. Back then, it wasn't the World Library. It was just a small cave," the ancient warbook recalled. Li Xiandao, Michael, and the others listened silently. They were all young and didn't know much about these things. Xiaoqi seemed to recall something, and for a moment she was stunned, overwhelmed with emotion. The first owner of Tiendi Money Shop was also the first owner she came into contact with. Any first place leaves a lasting impression, and Xiaoqi is no exception. She remembered the first master, who was so elegant and talented. Li Xiandao glanced at Xiaoqi and couldn't help but purse his lips when he saw her like this. But he didn't know what to say, so he just listened silently. The ancient Book of War sighed, "I too was born with my own intelligence in the Heavenly Bank, and was lent out several times, leaving behind some legends." During this period, other heavenly books were also collected one after another. The 10 heavenly books compiled by the 10 fiends with all their life's efforts fell into the Heaven and Earth Bank, and then they were born with intelligence and began to manage the library in the Heaven and Earth Bank. As the number of books in the library increased, it was later renamed the Library of All Nations, and the owner changed. The ancient war book paused here, as if it had thought of something. Xiaoqi felt the same way, thinking of her second master. After experiencing her first master, her second master also left behind a significant memory. Seeing this, Xiandao pouted again, puffed out his cheeks, and said nothing. The ancient book of war continued. From then on, the Library of All Nations began to take shape. The 10 fiends were the managers, and the others were newly born races. We lived in harmony, and even if someone was loaned out, they could return quickly. All of this came to an abrupt end with the 8th master, the ancient book of war said disdainfully. When it comes to Xiandao's ex, the ancient war books always seem to dislike him. Xiaoqi also stopped reminiscing, her expression turning disgusted. Xiandao watched this and found it amusing. His ex really was universally disliked. So, you still haven't said where the Lord of War is? Xiandao asked calmly. I don't know, the ancient war book said dejectedly. Don't know. Xiandao frowned. If you, as an ancient book of war, don't know, then where am I supposed to find it? Although I don't know, I can sense that he is still alive, the ancient war book insisted. Xiandao looked at him speechlessly. You're not a woman, how can you have a sixth sense? Chapter 76 The Army Sets Off. The Book of War was created by the Lord of War. The Lord of War earned his reputation through countless battles. He was incredibly powerful, and in a very, very long time ago, he was known as one of the 10 fiends. The 10 fierce ones are 10 of the strongest beings in the world, none of whom are easy to deal with. Even today, the 10 heavenly books passed down by the 10 fiends are still treasures that many people dream of obtaining, as obtaining the heavenly books grants them invincible power. Looking at the stubborn ancient book of war, Xiandao said helplessly, I will help you keep an eye out for the Lord of War's whereabouts, but I can't guarantee it. The ancient book on war says, just keep an eye out. I believe that if the main warlord is still alive, then it will definitely happen. He is not someone who can stay still. Xiandao looked at the ancient book of war. He was very powerful, but at the same time, he was also very weak. Very powerful is how outsiders perceive it. To Michael, to the light of heaven, to Gabriel. Very weak is relative to Xiandao. The Book of War belongs to the Heaven and Earth Bank, which in turn belongs to Xiandao. Therefore, Xiandao can easily defeat the Book of War. But Xiandao did not do that. Those who are in charge should treat their subordinates with respect, encourage them to work hard, and give them dignity. Xiandao's predecessor is a bad example, and Xiandao must be wary of it. So he agreed to the ancient Book of War's request, saying, Then prepare yourself and take 10,000 lesser flame kings to Hell Heaven. I've given them a name, and you will use that name as the name of your army. What is it called? The ancient warbook asked. The Burning Legion. Xiandao said with a confident smile. The name was a tribute to a game he played in his previous life, featuring the Burning Legion, the Cataclysm, and other elements that Xiandao still remembered vividly. The Burning Legion, they are fire giants themselves, that's fitting. The ancient book of war agreed. I'll set off now, taking them with me. Give me time, and I'll help you train an invincible army, the ancient war book said confidently. Xiandao wanted to hear those words, and said with satisfaction, Then I'll be waiting for your good news. All right, the first plenary meeting of the Heaven and Earth Bank is now adjourned. The trouble with the little Flame King has been successfully resolved. Meeting adjourned. Xiandao clapped his hands and said happily, As long as he doesn't offer treasures or divine resources as a supplement, anything goes. Now the ancient book of war takes the initiative, leading the little Flame King to Hell Heaven, where they are self-sufficient and do not need any subsidies from Xiandao. They can also develop their own advantages and train an invincible army. As a capitalist, Xiandao only made a promise. He was very satisfied. This transaction can be considered a success. The war book and Xiao Qi left together to take all the little flame kings with them. Li Xiandao waved his hand and said, "You all go and help too. Make sure the 10,000 little flame kings are obedient, cultivate well, and come back soon." The battle angel Michael, the White Emperor of Light, the Archangel Gabriel, and the monk Tianxin all went to help. Li Xiandao, all by himself, waved his sleeve, and the conference table disappeared. He then happily headed to the Universal Library. My foundation is too weak. Although I am omniscient and omnipotent, I have no understanding of the history and legends of this world. Li Xiandao was still very wary. He must not be complacent and must always maintain a thirst for knowledge. This is why he was determined to redeem the Universal Library. These tens of millions of books are enough for Li Xiandao to make up for his shortcomings. In the Universal Library, Li Xiandao sent away the ancient war books and became the manager of the place. Despite being called a manager, Li Xiandao didn't interfere in anything. He simply had someone come when needed. The more than 10,000 book spirits here are also very willing to help Li Xiandao. "Master, this is the history and legend, 3 million copies." A muscular book spirit walked over and carried in many books. This is a body refining technique that gave birth to a book spirit. Li Xiandao smiled slightly, gestured for him to put it down, and then silently flipped through the pages. The gift of omniscience and omnipotence came into play at this moment. Countless pieces of knowledge flooded into his mind, and in an instant, Li Xiandao grasped and mastered them. Using this talent to read books is practically cheating for Li Xiandao. The books were absorbed by Li Xiandao in an instant. He began to know the world's historical legends like the back of his hand. After studying history, Li Xiandao continued to study martial arts. The vast library of the world contains mostly martial arts, and various martial arts have given birth to book spirits, forming a new race. This is a great treasure. Li Xiandao silently looked at them all. Various martial arts techniques. Some are no worse than the Great River Sword Qi, some are even more powerful than the Great River Sword Qi, and some even transcend the standards of the 9 heavens and 10 earths. If Li Xiandao hadn't been short on time, he would have done the same as last time, burning 500 years of his cultivation to accelerate his progress. Li Xiandao is diligently cultivating and learning. Even if he cannot succeed in cultivating in a short time, memorizing the knowledge will be of great help to him. Once you arrive and have the time, you can directly burn through 500 or 5,000 years of your lifespan, allowing yourself to slowly comprehend it in the ocean of time. Learning time flies, and before Li Xiandao knew it, he had spent 15 days in the Universal Library. 15 days later, the ancient Book of War, along with 10,000 lesser Flame Kings, departed via teleportation array, entering other regions to begin their smuggling journey into Hell Heaven. As for ascension, how can a book with 10,000 little flame kings ascend? Michael and the others saw them off for a while, and then quietly improved themselves upon their return. Xiao Qi stayed at the Heaven and Earth money shop, occasionally visiting Li Xiandao. When she saw Li Xiandao engrossed in reading, unable to tear himself away, Xiao Qi was quite satisfied. The owner of a money exchange must always maintain a thirst for knowledge and always strive for progress. Xiao Qi didn't want to bother Li Xiandao, so she didn't enter the Universal Library for half a month. On the 16th day, Xiao Qi had no choice but to disturb Li Xiandao. "We have guests. The guests must be received by Li Xiandao. Xiao Qi is not acceptable, as she is only a supporting character." Just as Li Xiandao was engrossed in his book, Xiao Qi's voice rang out, "Master, a new guest has arrived." When Li Xiandao looked up, his eyes glazed over for a moment, as millions of words surged before his eyes, all of which he had just read. Li Xiandao closed his eyes, trying hard to suppress his emotions, before letting out a long sigh, standing up, and stretching his body. "Who is this person?" Li Xiandao asked casually as he walked out of the Universal Library. Xiao Qi smiled and said, "They're an acquaintance of Master." Li Xiandao was taken aback. "I don't know anyone I know." All the people Li Xiandao knew were at the Heaven and Earth money shop, so where else could he find acquaintances? Chapter 77 Auntie Little 7. Li Xiandao, dressed neatly and wearing a dark gold mask, waited for his acquaintance in the trading hall of the Heaven and Earth Bank. In fact, he couldn't remember any acquaintances. Li Xiandao, who had only been in this world for a short time, knew very few people, and even fewer knew him. Acquaintance. Who is it? Da-da-da. Footsteps sounded, and a beautiful figure entered the trading hall of the Heaven and Earth Bank. She was graceful, with snow-white skin and an otherworldly face, and was incomparably beautiful. Li Xiandao subconsciously glanced at Xiao Qi beside him. This woman's beauty, like Xiao Qi's, is astonishing. Li Xiandao has many different opinions on beauty, but these evaluations are all based on first impressions. He was immediately struck by her beauty. As the woman approached, his heart skipped a beat, and he was completely overwhelmed by her stunning beauty. In Li Xiandao's eyes, she was an unparalleled beauty. Without a doubt, the woman in front of them, and Xiao Qi beside her, are both of this type. There are also types that are very pleasing to the eye at first glance. It gives a friendly feeling at first glance. It gives a warm feeling at first glance. He gives off a cold and aloof vibe at first glance, etc. The concept of beauty is endless, and everyone has different standards of beauty, but those beauties that transcend everyone's aesthetic sense are still very rare. One glance was enough to find her beautiful. That's the woman standing before Li Xiandao. Li Xiandao looked closely and was certain that he did not recognize the woman. Where does the term acquaintance come from? Li Xiandao looked at Xiao Qi and asked with his eyes. Xiao Qi smiled slightly, her sweet and charming smile refreshing. Without answering Li Xiandao, "Sit down and state what you want to trade." Li Xiandao said calmly. The woman wore a long red dress that perfectly accentuated her figure. Upon hearing this, she gently sat down, revealing her long, white, beautiful legs. But Li Xiandao looked straight ahead, his eyes cold and indifferent. He felt that this woman possessed an innate allure. Every move she made, every smile, could entice people to look at her and explore her. "I want to resurrect my mother and father," the woman whispered, her voice delicate and gentle. Li Xiandao asked, "Who is your father?" "Wu Tianyu," the woman said, uttering a name. Li Xiandao looked at her in surprise. "Wu Tianyu's daughter? Wu Tianyu's daughter? Wu Tianyu's daughter?" Li Xiandao felt that there must be something wrong with his ears. How long has it been? Has it been a month? Wu Tianyu's daughter was just born? How did she become so charming, beautiful, and stunning? Li Xiandao looked at Xiao Qi. Xiao Qi nodded, her meaning clear. This woman was Wu Tianyu's daughter. Li Xiandao asked in bewilderment. "I remember your father came to me for a deal not long ago. At that time, you were still in your mother's womb. How long has it been? How have you grown so much? Even if this is a fantasy or mystical world, you can't just let it grow like this, can you?" "That's right. I was born on a lonely peak beside the capital of the Great Li dynasty. I grew up very quickly after birth because I have the bloodline of the nine-tailed celestial fox, and my mother transferred all her essence to me, which is why I grew up so quickly in a short period of time." Wu Xian'er nodded, her expression a little sad. Li Xiandao stroked his chin and said, "You just said that your mother also died?" "That's right. These days, my mother has been running around constantly, being relentlessly pursued by the Fox clan. She was exhausted and could not escape in the end. She could only transfer her essence to me so that I could grow up and not be discovered by the Fox clan. She lost her life and went to follow my father." Wu Xian'er's face was a little cold, clearly showing that the hatred she felt was too great to count. Li Xiandao said softly, "If you want to resurrect your parents, what price are you willing to pay?" At this point, Li Xiandao was still a little embarrassed. He had just activated the corpse of Wu Xian'er's father, Wu Tianyu, and lent it to the King of Flames. Even if he were to be resurrected, he wouldn't be able to resurrect himself. Wu Xian'er said with a determined look in her eyes, "My talent. I know that the Heavenly Bank is all-powerful and capable of anything, thanks to my nine-tailed celestial fox talent. I will use my nine-tailed celestial fox talent to get my parents back, Wu Xian'er said, looking at Li Xian with hope. Li Xiandao nodded and said, your talent is indeed remarkable. As a nine-tailed celestial fox, once you reach maturity, with diligent cultivation, you will eventually become an immortal. But that is the talent of maturity. Wu Xian'er frowned, looking pitiful, and asked, what do you mean? If you want to exchange your parents, we can sign a contract for 100 years. During these 100 years, you will work for me, and I will protect your parents' bodies so they don't decay. After 100 years, when you reach maturity, we can proceed with the transaction, Li Xiandao explained carefully. There's nothing we can do about it. Wu Tianyu's body had already been lent out by Li Xiandao and couldn't be retrieved, so Li Xiandao could only stall Wu Xian'er. Besides, Li Xiandao doesn't have the ability to revive others right now. The souls of Wu Tianyu and his wife have disappeared, and Li Xiandao must wait until he becomes stronger before he can resurrect them. Is it really possible 100 years from now? Wu Xian'er asked Li Xian with hopeful eyes. Li Xiandao nodded and said, no problem, I guarantee it will be possible in 100 years. Li Xiandao snapped his fingers. Shao Qi brought over a contract, placed it on the table, and showed it to Wu Xian'er. Wu Xian'er looked at it carefully, especially the part about resurrecting her parents, which she read 3 times before she was sure it was correct. I'll sign. Wu Xian'er wrote her name, her handwriting beautiful. Li Xiandao nodded and said, since you've signed the contract, from now on you are my subordinate. Remember to obey my orders 100%. Wu Xian'er blushed, bit her red lips, nodded and whispered, I will be obedient. Not bad. You are beautiful and very talented. From now on, you will follow Shao Qi, and she will guide you. Li Xiandao pointed. Shao Qi and Wu Xian'er both looked at Li Xiandao in surprise. Shao Qi never expected that Li Xiandao would give Wu Xian'er to her. This is a nine-tailed celestial fox with a naturally alluring nature. Every generation of the nine-tailed celestial fox is the ultimate dream for every man. Shao Qi originally thought that Li Xiandao accepted Wu Xian'er because he wanted Wu Xian'er to serve him in bed. Even Wu Xian'er thought so, especially when she heard Li Xiandao say that she should obey his every word. She really thought that she was going to serve him in bed. But who would have thought that Li Xiandao would hand Wu Xian'er over to Shao Qi in the blink of an eye? Shao Qi looked at Li Xiandao strangely, wanting to confirm whether there was something wrong with Li Xiandao's functions. Li Xiandao was enraged by her gaze. He walked to Shao Qi's side and whispered, don't be fooled by how well she's developed now. She's only a few months old and still a baby. Shao Qi smiled brightly and whispered to Li Xiandao, don't you men all like young girls like this? Li Xiandao blushed and quickly said, what do you mean by we men? Don't generalize. It's a group of shameless, vulgar, and despicable men. And what about you? Shao Qi asked Li Xian with a half-smile. Li Xiandao coughed, indicating he didn't want to answer the question. Well, from now on, besides my orders, you also have to listen to Aunt Shao Qi's orders, Li Xiandao said to Wu Xian'er. Shao Qi immediately stared at Li Xiandao with a murderous look on her pretty face. This was the first time Li Xiandao had seen Shao Qi change her expression, and it was a bit scary. Chapter 78 100 Pocket Watches. For 7 consecutive days, Li Xiandao spent his time reading in the Universal Library. Shao Qi hasn't spoken to him for 7 days. Not a single word. I'll treat you like you don't exist when we meet. On the contrary, she got along very well with Wu Xian'er, calling her sister, and being very affectionate with her. Even if Li Xiandao was stupid, he knew why he had upset Shao Qi, so he simply stayed in the Universal Library and didn't leave. If you don't want to see me, then I won't see you either. Snort. The main structure of the Universal Library is a large mountain, hollowed out, with countless books wandering around, resembling a small country. The book spirits don't need to eat, drink, or excrete. They absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and gain nourishment from reading the text. The vast library of tens of millions of books is enough for them to live a carefree life. So even during the period when the world's library was mortgaged, it developed very well. Li Xiandao stayed quietly in the Universal Library this time, without having anyone bring him any books. Among the cultivation techniques he had previously studied, he learned a technique called One Thought, 10,000 Buddhas. One thought is all it takes to be 1,000 Buddhas. This is the core of this technique. Every second, countless thoughts arise in every person. Each thought is like 10,000 Buddhas. Whether these 10,000 Buddhas can attain enlightenment depends on your control. Even if ordinary people could give birth to 10,000 Buddhas, they wouldn't have the ability to manifest all of them. One must be a person with strong mental cultivation, capable of controlling one's desires, thoughts, and ideas. Buddhism speaks of a Buddhaland within the palm of one's hand, a Buddhaland with tens of millions of believers. Taoism speaks of the mustard seed space, which is nothing more than a speck of dust, yet it can contain a whole world. Humans have far more thoughts than the Buddha's pure land, more than a mustard seed, so if we can make good use of them, we will surely achieve twice the result with half the effort. After understanding this technique, Li Xiandao immediately began practicing it. With his talent, he completed the training of this technique in no time. From beginner to expert, learn in 3 days and master in 7. Li Xiandao is now using this technique to create 100,000 Buddhas. 100,000 thoughts are scattered across the 100 floors of the Universal Library. There are many Li Xiandaos on every floor. Some were holding books, reading them with great interest. Some lowered their heads, frowning as they looked at the profound books. Some were smiling, admiring a wonderful book. Some sat directly on the ground, waving their arms and legs excitedly. 1,000 Li Xiandaos would have 1,000 different thoughts, let alone 100,000 Li Xiandaos. The book spirits in the Universal Library were quite surprised at first sight. Some of them even passed through the body of Li Xiandao's Thought Buddha and discovered that Thought Buddha was ultimately not a physical entity. Li Xiandao's true form, however, kept his eyes closed, receiving and processing information from all directions. This was very efficient. At least it allowed Li Xiandao's foundation to improve rapidly. His strength has increased. Outwardly, Li Xiandao has a more reserved demeanor, resembling a refined gentleman, dressed in black, with his short hair tied into a small braid, and wearing a faint smile. This will continue for a month. Xiao Qi has finally come to find Li Xiandao. Although she was a little angry, she knew what was important and what was urgent. Li Xiandao had stayed at the Universal Library for a month, immersing himself in the ocean of knowledge and unable to extricate himself, but the Heaven and Earth Bank also needed to develop. Tiandi Money Exchange has not been open for business for a month. So Xiao Qi came to find Li Xiandao. When she saw it, she was stunned. Li Xiandao's temperament was completely different from before. After reading extensively, Li Xiandao did not seem to have changed, but it was as if he had changed from the inside out. Even Xiao Qi was quite surprised, her beautiful eyes scrutinizing Li Xiandao. "Master!" Xiao Qi called softly. Li Xiandao opened his eyes, and in an instant, the entire Universal Library and the 100,000 Buddha thoughts returned to Li Xiandao's body like weary birds returning to their nests and dragons returning to the sea. Li Xiandao let out a long sigh and asked, "What is it?" "The Heaven and Earth Bank has been closed for a month." Xiao Qi said helplessly. Li Xiandao asked in surprise, "Has it been a month already?" He was so engrossed in the ocean of knowledge that he lost track of time. If Xiao Qi hadn't interrupted him, Li Xiandao would have continued reading until all the books in the library were in his mind. Xiao Qi nodded and said seriously, "You have to be a good boss." Li Xiandao thought for a moment and said, "I redeemed the Time Palace before and got 10 spots. What reward will I get this time for redeeming the Library of all nations?" Xiao Qi said, 100 spots. Li Xiandao said with satisfaction, "That's not bad. With 100 slots, the transaction volume will be much larger. Not only that, this time it's not just limited to the Great Li land, we can enter the Heaven and Earth battlefield, Xiaoqi said with a smile. Then can we enter other territories? Li Xiandao asked, his eyes lighting up. Xiaoqi said, to enter other realms, you must open up a world passage. Otherwise, you cannot enter. Li Xiandao asked, what is needed to open a passage between worlds? Build a world-class teleportation array. Xiaoqi explained to Li Xiandao in detail. A world-class teleportation array requires blueprints and various materials. Once you gather them all, you can build it, Xiaoqi said. Then where are the blueprints? Li Xiandao asked, reaching out his hand. The blueprints for the world-class teleportation array have been lent out, and the person who lent it isn't in the Great Li region, so it's very difficult to find, Xiaoqi said helplessly. So, I can only trade in the Great Li land, the battlefield of heaven and earth? Li Xiandao murmured. Xiaoqi nodded. It's all right, at least the scope has expanded. I'm practically invincible in the Great Li land now. No one can stop me. To be honest, the Great Li land is too remote, resources are pitifully scarce, and there are ridiculously many mortals. Li Xiandao shook his head helplessly. Just like when Li Xiandao first transmigrated to Taicong City, one could become an ancestor simply by reaching the Dao Inquiry realm. If this were in another region, he would only be a minor disciple when he asked for advice. Master, you can throw the pocket watch out, Xiaoqi reminded him. With a wave of his hand, Li Xiandao conjured 100 blood-red pocket watches in front of him. Li Xiandao smiled slightly and said, find a suitable guest. Location, battlefield of heaven and earth. Li Xiandao doesn't intend to lose a single one of them in Dolly this time. To be honest, he's starting to look down on Big Lady now. No wonder Dolly has always struggled to recover. Those with high cultivation levels immediately leave for other regions. Without experts and resources, how can it develop? By the way, how are things going between you and Wu Xianer? Li Xiandao asked. Xiaoqi squinted her eyes and casually said, it's great, we got along quite well. That's good. You're older than her and an elder, so please take good care of her. Li Xiandao said this deliberately to make Xiaoqi ignore him before. He. Xiaoqi just laughed, but her laughter was a little scary. Li Xiandao felt that he couldn't joke about this, so he remained silent and left. I won't come next time. Xiaoqi looks like a servant, she's not pretty at all. Chapter 79 Dragon Seeks Emptiness. Battlefield between heaven and earth. A group of people are chasing and killing a woman. The woman had a cold and aloof face. She ran at top speed, glancing back from time to time as she ran, her expression indifferent. How dare you? I am your own elder sister. How dare you chase me in the battlefield of heaven and earth? You deserve to die. The woman's eyes flashed with cold light, filled with rage. The woman was young and in her prime. Her smart attire made her movements very graceful and elegant. Especially her long legs, which are very long and straight. But a deep knife wound on her back betrayed her predicament. She was injured, being hunted down, and her fate was uncertain. My dear royal sister, don't struggle anymore. As long as you promise to drink the potion and obey me, I promise I won't harm your life. A smug laugh rang out, causing the woman's face to change drastically. Long Baichuan, you are utterly depraved. I am your own elder sister, the woman shouted fiercely, her expression cold. She stopped running, her eyes constantly thinking, looking around, and people were gathering from all directions, surrounding her. Escape is no longer an option. Her only support is. Long Mishu, have you heard that there is no kinship among the royal family, that brothers kill each other, that brothers are estranged, and that palace intrigues are extremely bloody? Do you really think that a blood relative like an older sister will make me spare you? Long Baichuan walked slowly over, his figure tall and his face cold. This was also a young man, dressed in fine clothes, walking slowly in, surrounded by dozens of people. Long Baichuan, the seventh prince of the Wanlong Empire. Opposite him was his own sister, the imperial sister Long Mishu, born of the same mother. I am your own sister, not born of another woman. Long Mishu said sadly. My dear older sister. How dare you talk to me about my own sister? Long Baichuan stared at Long Mishu with a ferocious expression. I am your own brother. I want to fight for the throne, that supreme position. You don't support me. You support the eldest prince instead. What is he? He was just born a few years earlier. You are my own sister. Long Baichuan shouted. Long Mishu chuckled and said, You want to fight for the throne, but don't you even consider what you have to offer? The crown prince has the support of 3 top-tier forces, possesses a celestial artifact, and has connections in other regions of the 10 lands. And you? What do you have? Long Mi asked angrily. In the end, you still look down on me. In your eyes I, Long Baichuan, am utterly worthless. But now, even my useless younger brother has managed to corner you here, Long Baichuan said smugly. Looking at the 30 people at the heavenly origin realm surrounding him, Long Mishu asked in confusion, Our mother comes from a scholar's family and has no experts. Where did you get so many subordinates to support you? If you, as my older sister, don't support me, then I'll naturally find someone else to support me, Long Baichuan said with a smug smile. Let me introduce you to the elite warriors of the Great Beauty Holy Land. They are now under my command. The Great Beauty Holy Land fully supports me. Although they are not yet as powerful as the 3 top families of the first prince, I am no pushover, Long Baichuan said smugly. Long Mishu said speechlessly, so it was Demei from the demonic sect Holy Land who was behind this. But what I don't understand is, how did you know I would enter the battlefield of heaven and earth? Long Baichuan burst into laughter. Sister, my dear sister, you've been wise all your life but made a foolish mistake this time. Long Mishu's eyes gleamed, his wisdom constantly at work as he analyzed the causes and consequences. It was the crown prince's men who betrayed you and revealed your whereabouts. Now you're trapped in my cage, and you can't turn the tables. Long Baichuan smiled smugly. Long Mishu closed his eyes and sighed. Feeling heartbroken now, you foolish woman? I've told you, I'm your real brother. We were born of the same mother, from the same womb, we share the same blood. You don't support me. You went to support the crown prince, and now you've been betrayed and fallen into my hands. Aren't you upset? Long Baichuan said loudly. I am in great pain, but not because of this. Long Mishu opened his eyes and stared sharply at Long Baichuan. Even Long Baichuan felt a little uncomfortable under that sharp gaze. The shadow cast on him by Long Mishu in the past was simply too great. His sister had always been meticulous in her planning since childhood, always having a plan in mind before acting. Although he was almost certain of success this time, he still felt a shiver run down his spine when he saw the look in his sister's eyes. I'm heartbroken. My brother and I both fell for the crown prince's scheme at the same time, Long Mishu said with a self-deprecating laugh. Long Baichuan frowned. What do you mean? My coming to the battlefield of heaven and earth was a very secretive matter, and very few people knew about it. You just happened to capture the crown prince's men, just happened to find out my whereabouts, and then just happened to come to arrest me and force me to submit. Don't you think that every step of the way is part of someone else's scheme? Long Mishu asked with a cold smile. Long Baichuan was stunned. In an instant, he felt a cold sweat break out on his back. Under the clear blue sky and sunlight, he felt a chill run through his body. Only after being reminded by Long Mishu did Long Baichuan belatedly realize that he had seemingly fallen into a trap. But even if I fall for your trap, so what? You'll be bewitched and obey me completely, and my plan will succeed. The crown prince's scheme against me will naturally come to nothing. Long Baichuan gritted his teeth and persisted to the end. Once you've done it, there's no turning back. Long Mishu sneered. You think you can make me drink the potion of infatuation? Of course, I'll force it down your throat even if I have to, Long Baichuan roared sternly. Then you're wrong. Long Mishu smiled smugly, looked around, and remained completely calm despite being surrounded by dozens of people. Although Long Mishu only has the cultivation of the peak of Tianyuan, she entered the battlefield of heaven and earth this time in order to break through to the Saint Realm. Surrounded by a crowd, Long Mishu had no way to escape or fight back, but she remained calm. My foolish brother, after entering the battlefield of heaven and earth, your sister had a fortuitous encounter, which is your eternal defeat. Long Mishu took out a blood-red pocket watch, smiled charmingly, and was extremely alluring. What is this thing? Long Baichuan asked with a serious expression. It's something that can ruin your plans and the crown prince's schemes. It's a treasure. I might not have believed it before, but now I do. Long Mishu smiled confidently. Long Baichuan frowned and shouted, "Take her down! Watch out for that blood-red thing." Yes. 30 assassins at the heavenly origin realm rushed forward in an instant to deal with Long Mishu. But Long Mishu clenched her hands and calmly said, "Goodbye, foolish little brother." Chapter 80. I Want to Be Empress. Brush. Long Baichuan was dumbfounded when Long Mishu, who had crushed the pocket watch, disappeared. Where are they? Where did they go? A perfectly healthy person was just here, and then suddenly vanished? Find it. Find it for me, or we'll all die. Long Baichuan roared, his expression panicked. He knew all too well how his older sister was capable of such things. He had finally managed to seize this opportunity, and if he didn't take advantage of it, what awaited him was a warm greeting from his own sister. Inside the heaven and earth bank, Long Mishu felt a sudden white light before his eyes, and then he arrived in a grand hall, where a mysterious master wearing a dark gold mask stood. Beside the mysterious master was a woman as beautiful as a fairy. Ignoring the throbbing pain in his back, Long Mishu asked with a serious expression, "Who are you? You've come all the way to my heaven and earth bank, and you still ask who we are?" Xiandao said calmly, wearing a mask. "The heavenly bank, where everything can be traded." Long Mishu swallowed hard, feeling as if she had encountered an incredible opportunity. Xiandao said indifferently, "Anything can be traded, provided you can offer enough chips. Now tell me, what do you want to trade?" "Ms. Long Mishu," Xiandao asked. "You know my name?" Long Mishu asked in surprise. "I know the past of everyone who enters the heaven and earth bank, so it's not surprising that I know your name," Xiandao said calmly. Long Mishu nodded, thinking that it was not surprising that the heaven and earth bank, with its great power and extensive influence, knew his name. Arriving in front of Xiandao, Long Mishu sat down, her back straight. She dared not lean against him. The wound on her back was only just beginning to scab over, and if she leaned against him, it would reopen the wound. The bleeding would be a minor issue. What worried Long Mishu was that it would displease Xiandao. "What do I want to trade?" After Long Mishu sat down, his mind suddenly went blank. She couldn't think of what she wanted to trade for a while. She wants a lot. She wanted to break through to the Saint Realm in her cultivation. She wanted to get herself out of danger. She also wanted to take revenge on the eldest prince and her foolish younger brother. She also wanted to show her father, who favored sons over daughters, that she, his daughter, was more capable than all his sons. Therefore, Long Mishu couldn't bring himself to say what he wanted to trade. Moreover, she hadn't figured out what she wanted to offer in exchange. Xiandao chuckled and said, "Don't be nervous. Think slowly, close your eyes, and ask yourself what you want most." Xiandao likes this woman. It wasn't a romantic attraction, but a business-related attraction. Upon entering the heavenly bank, Xiandao's favorite type of person was someone with an insatiable appetite. Desire knows no bounds. As long as you dare to think and speak, Xiandao will like it. Because you talk too much, think too much, and your desires are insatiable, that's how the heavenly money shop can make money. If you come in and say you want a martial arts manual in exchange for 5 years of your lifespan, then Xiandao is getting too little out of the picture. Only a woman like Long Mishu, who wants everything and is unwilling to give up anything, is the most suitable customer for Chendi Money Shop. Li Xiandao had to admire the fact that the first person he found among the 100 pocket watches was so satisfactory. Long Mishu took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and began to seriously consider what he really wanted. Li Xiandao stood up and walked to Long Mishu's side. Da. Li Xiandao's footsteps were neither too light nor too heavy as he approached Long Mishu's side. Li Xiandao looked at Long Mishu intently. Long Mishu suddenly opened her eyes, which burned intensely. This was the ambition of a person, a woman. I want to be the emperor of the Wanlong Empire. Empress. Long Mishu stared intently at Li Xiandao's eyes beneath his dark gold mask, emphasizing the words. Li Xiandao nodded in satisfaction and said, "No problem. I can help you realize this wish step by step, but what can you give me in return?" Li Xiandao's question stumped Long Mishu. What can she give? Money. Long Mishu himself didn't want to bring it up. Did Li Xiandao look like someone who would lack money? Treasure. If Long Mishu had many treasures, he wouldn't have entered the battlefield of heaven and earth in order to break through. Because the current emperor of the Wanlong Empire is very sexist, even though Long Mishu's excellence has surpassed that of all the princes, she still receives less resources than the least favored prince. Long Mishu said with difficulty, "I can accompany you." Long Mishu's only advantage is his own body. Virgin. She is very beautiful, the kind of cold and aloof beauty, with long legs and a perfect figure. She is truly a gem. Long Mishu had always known that a woman's body was very useful at crucial moments, especially her virginity, for a man. I am still a virgin. I learned many ways to serve men from the palace maids. I can do it, as long as you support me to become emperor. Long Mishu emphasized. Li Xiandao watched her silently. Xiao Qi squinted, remained silent, and stood behind, watching expressionlessly. The Myriad Dragons Empire, located in the desolate ancient land of the Ten Lands, is an empire that governs hundreds of millions of people. It has countless experts under its command, and each of its princes is supported by top-tier powerful forces. Furthermore, some of the predecessors of the Myriad Dragons Empire have ascended to even higher realms, such as the Nine Heavens or the Immortal Realm. What good is it if you're a virgin to be the empress of such a top-tier empire? If you see no benefit in it, your beauty is useless. Of course, unless you look like the lady next to me, then there might be a glimmer of hope. But unfortunately, you don't have that chance. After refusing, Li Xiandao praised Xiao Qi. Xiao Qi's smiling eyes returned. She pursed her lips, trying to suppress her smile, but it still inadvertently spread out, revealing a woman's shy joy to the fullest. The gentleness of that lowered head is like a water lily shyly trembling in the cool breeze. Unfortunately, Li Xiandao didn't see it. He was staring intently at Long Mishu. When Long Mishu came in, Xiao Qi provided her information to Li Xiandao. The Wanlong Empire is considered the most powerful force in the desolate ancient land, boasting numerous fierce generals, strategists, and millions of regular troops, making it invincible. Even so-called holy lands and powerful forces must submit to the might of the Myriad Dragons Empire. In particular, the fact that the Wanlong Empire can communicate with its predecessors in the Nine Heavens has a deterrent effect on many people. So if Long Mishu could resolve the issue of the female emperor of such a country simply by wanting to have sex with Li Xiandao a few times, then Li Xiandao must be brain-dead. If it gets a different owner, maybe it will agree. But Li Xiandao would never agree to that. Then tell me, what price do I need to pay in exchange for your promise and support? Long Mishu took a deep breath, knowing that seduction would not work, and began to ask seriously. She will carefully consider the costs and benefits. Li Xiandao smiled, took a contract from Xiao Qi, and said, "It's all in the contract. Sign it if you agree."